81% of Christian moms say they've experienced burnout, and most of them are trying to fix it by doing less. But burnout isn't just about your to-do list. It's about your beliefs and your nervous system. And if you don't fix both, the cycle continues. I would know. Most Christian moms don't realize that their burnout isn't just about doing too much. It's about what they believe motherhood requires of them and how their bodies are constantly bracing for battle because of it. It's much harder to renew your mind, as we're called to as Christians, without calming your nervous system. And you can't calm your nervous system if you don't renew your mind. It's this symbiotic relationship. I came across this survey recently that stopped me cold. It was from Barna, Lifeway, and the National Women's Ministry Association, some of the largest voices in Christian research. They asked thousands of Christian moms across America this simple question: have you ever experienced burnout in motherhood? 81% said yes. 81% of women trying to follow Jesus, love their families, and raise their children in the faith are barely making it. And the answers they gave about why they were burning out, they weren't just about doing too much. They were about what they believed motherhood should feel like, what they believed about themselves, and what they believed about God. And that's what shook me, because their answers used to be mine too. So today, I'm going to show you how to fix both. This isn't just theory. This is what got me out of survival mode after years of waking up angry, overstimulated, constantly yelling, and drowning in shame. This changed everything for me. So if you're new here, I am Kiri, and I help Christian homemakers who are living in a fog of exhaustion and stress to become the patient and peaceful mother and wife they've always dreamt of being. If you're a Christian mother who is feeling burned out and longing to be the joyful mother and wife that you've always imagined without turning to therapy, supplements, or endless decluttering, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel. Christian moms often believe that if you're tired, you're doing it right. That if you're exhausted, overwhelmed, and burnt out, it just means you're being faithful and living out that sacrificial calling that you ought to. But what if the heaviness you're feeling isn't just about the housework? What if it's coming from something deeper, like carrying a spiritual burden that God never asked you to carry alone? From the survey, 78% of Christian moms said that they were stressed about keeping up with the work of the home. But what was more chilling to me was that 59% were stressed about discipling their children. Whoa. And here's the thing, a majority of those moms also said that they felt they carried the primary burden of bringing this mission to life in raising their children. I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that there's a direct correlation between moms who feel like they're failing at discipling their children and moms who feel like they're doing it alone. Now, lest you think I'm going to start ragging on the dads, I'm not. But I do want to offer a practical suggestion, especially if you've ever felt this way too. Like the weight of spiritual leadership in your home is falling squarely on your shoulders. So here's one way to invite your husband into this God-given leadership role, especially if this is an area that you've struggled with. Let's just take one example. Let's say you're overwhelmed trying to choose a curriculum for your homeschool this year, or you're wrestling with whether or not to send your kids to public school or private school or a homeschool. Ask your husband as the spiritual leader of your home, and since you're likely trying to give your children a Christ-centered education, bring him into the decision. Ask him what he thinks. Invite him to do some of the research. You don't have to carry the weight of a decision like this alone, and I know so many moms feel the pressure of decisions like this mental load that they're carrying. And I think one of the issues is that they want full control over it. They do the research. They're watching all the YouTube videos of the curriculum and all these things. But if you invite your husband into more decisions like this shows honor to him, and it removes some of the mental load from your own shoulders. So it's a win-win. This is just one example, but there are so many ways that this can look in a marriage. The heart behind it is simple. Ask your husband for his input, ask for his advice, and genuinely consider what he says. Our men love to be our heroes. They're problem solvers by nature, and they want to help us. So invite him in, not with a tone of frustration or exhaustion, but with a heart of honor, humility, and hope. And I think that you'll be surprised about how much lighter your load feels when you stop carrying this mental burden alone. Now, I know some of you are married to non-believing husbands, and truly, my heart goes out to you. That is a real cross to bear, and I can only imagine the uphill climb it must feel like. But remember this, the Lord has not made a mistake in placing you in this marriage. He sees you, He's with you, and He's using you. As First Peter says, maybe it will be your conduct that plants the seeds of truth and wins your husband over to the faith. So when you feel the weight of discouragement, when your husband isn't leading spiritually in the ways that you long for, remember, you can still honor the role God has given him. You can still invite him into leadership, even if it feels awkward or imperfect. It's not all on your shoulders. Let the Lord carry you, and don't be afraid to let your husbands carry a little more too. Now, I have to give a little disclaimer because I know that I will probably get a lot of comments saying, well, but my husband doesn't want to lead, or that's not his thing, or I don't know, whatever, whatever you guys are thinking about your situation and your specific husband and why this can't work for you, I would challenge you to maybe just approach it from a different angle or with a different tone, or try to really show him honor when you approach him and just see what happens. When we try to be both the nurturer and the leader, the teacher and the shepherd, the one who cares and the one who carries, it's no wonder we feel burned out as moms. And that's where we're headed next, because there's a deeper reason that you're exhausted, and it's not just about being busy. So let's talk about it. Somewhere along the way, we started believing that the more we suffer, the more godly we must be. That if we're constantly sacrificing ourselves, our time, our rest, our joy, then surely we're being good mothers. But there's a fine line between Christ-like sacrifice and silent martyrdom. One leads to life, the other leads to burnout. There's this image of the ideal Christian mom that is ever cheerful, perfectly disciplined, constantly pouring out. And yet, have you ever found yourself snapping at your kids before breakfast even hits the table and overstimulated before the day has even really begun? You're not crazy. You're not ungrateful. Your body might just be stuck in a state of fight or flight. I've heard so many moms say it's just a season as they quietly burn out behind a smile. They wear their exhaustion like a badge of honor. No help, no boundaries, no joy. But that's not necessarily biblical motherhood. Yes, Jesus calls us to lay down our lives, but not to neglect the life he's put in us. There's a difference between laying your life down in love and living in a constant state of depletion because you believe you're not allowed to rest. Yes, there are going to be times where we're going to be exhausted and we have to sacrifice our own basic needs in order to meet the needs of our children for a time, but not chronically. But I used to live in that cycle, and that led me to frequent outbursts, constant crying, overstimulated from the moment I opened my eyes to the moment I crashed in bed at night. And I tried everything, detoxing from social media, changing my diet, decluttering, detoxing from toxins. But none of it worked for more than a few days because the real issue was deeper. I needed to literally rewire my brain. And when I did, everything changed. So, how do we get out of this mindset in motherhood, knowing that motherhood does require sacrifice and does require so much of us, and does in fact require us to take up our cross daily? So, how can we strike that balance? First, we need to focus on Romans 5:3-5, which says we can glory in tribulations because of what they produce: character, endurance, hope. I'm paraphrasing, by the way. And then also focus on John 1:16, which reminds us that from his fullness, we have all received grace upon grace. Grace upon grace. How freeing is that? So here's how I embraced that grace, and I made some real changes in myself and my home, and I found the balance between sacrificial love and taking care of myself. First, it all comes down to actually renewing your mind. You've heard that renewing your mind is important, but are you actually doing it? I thought I was. I read my Bible, I prayed, but my thoughts were still spiraling with stress, fear, frustration, and annoyance. The thorn in my side, as Paul talks about, was my own thoughts. So I got serious. I started interrupting thoughts like, oh, my kids are so annoying, I can't get anything done. and replaced them with my kids are giving me an opportunity to disciple them. That's my top priority. And my children are never an interruption. They are my purpose. Renewing your mind means replacing lies with truth, not just reading the Bible, but applying it to the battlefield of your thoughts. And you know what happened? My default thoughts started changing. My go to destructive responses were being rewired, and my relationships were being redeemed. Okay, but even after my thoughts changed, my body needed something else: rest, real daily rest. So, second is I weaved pockets of regulation throughout my day. If you're ignoring your body's need for rest, your nervous system is going to let you know. I had no idea that I had something called nervous system dysfunction until I actually learned what it was, and I was blown away about how this is exactly what I was experiencing. I learned that the outbursts I had to minor stressors, like my toddler accidentally dropping something and making a loud noise or spilling something, that those outbursts weren't just my own lack of self-control, but the fact that my body was in a chronic state of fight or flight. So if my nervous system was already in high drive, any other little stressor, minor stressors, would just send me over the edge. I learned that the overstimulation I felt from the moment I woke up in the morning till the moment I went to bed wasn't just a matter of cutting out coffee or eliminating all the things that trigger it, but that I had to tell my brain it was safe. I learned that all the random symptoms I had, like autoimmune issues, frequent illnesses and infections, chronic fatigue, brain fog, and insomnia, were all tied back to one thing: my body was chronically dysregulated. I was living in a state of panic and I didn't even know it. So I made it my top priority to weave pockets of regulation throughout my day. Not bubble baths or vague self care, but real intentional ways to tell my brain, you're safe. And this is the exact kind of work that I walk my students through in my free workshop, getting out of fight or flight and finally healing the root of burnout. So if you're stuck in survival mode, overwhelmed, overstimulated, reactive, I'd love for you to join that free workshop. I'll walk you through the exact method I use to rewire my brain, calm my nervous system, and renew my mind and find joy again in my homemaking. So if you haven't watched it yet, there's a link below to sign up, and also you get a free workbook to go along. And then God showed me one more thing that I needed to change, one that I never saw coming. Finally, I had to stop focusing so much on the pain that I was experiencing. It feels productive to analyze your struggles, right? But what if it's actually telling your brain to increase the pain and symptoms of burnout? I used to obsess over every symptom: the fatigue, irritability, overwhelm. The more I focused on them, the worse they got. Take insomnia, for example. You're lying in bed, desperate to sleep, counting down the hours until you have to wake up and panicking about how tired you'll be tomorrow. But have you ever noticed that never works? You can't stress your way into sleep. What does work? Getting up, moving to a different environment, reading a book, opening your Bible, and shifting your focus completely. And suddenly, you're sleepy again. The moment you stop hyper-focusing on the symptom, your brain begins to calm down. The same is true for other symptoms too, like ear-piercing headaches or that white-hot anger that floods your body in a triggering moment. If you can just pause and find a way to detach and distract yourself for even a short time, you send a powerful message to your brain. You're safe. You'd be surprised how little time it takes to actually feel better when you stop obsessing and start regulating. So I teach a full framework on how to do this step by step in my course. It's called my Christian Brain Rewiring Formula. And yeah, healing with Christ, it doesn't fit neatly into a formula unless that formula points you back to Him every single step of the way. So instead of spiraling, I began celebrating even tiny progress really intentionally through a wins and praises journal that I kept. When I would feel symptoms pop up, I'd focus on these wins, even small things like I didn't yell when I spilled something this morning, or I actually wanted to play with my kids today. And slowly, my body started to heal, and I started to feel like myself again. My energy came back, my irritability disappeared. I started experiencing true joy, something that I hadn't felt in a really long time. My kids, they felt like blessings again. My brain immediately started looking for the good in all trials. Even my husband noticed a difference and praised me. And most importantly, I was finally free from the cycle of overstimulation and anger that had defined my days for so long. My symptoms started to disappear one by one. So if this is relatable to you and you're like, yes, Carrie, that is me, I would love for you to join that free workshop where I walk you through the exact steps that I took to find peace again. So you can join using that link below. So tell me, what part of this resonated most with you? Let me know in the comments. It's always such a joy to have you here. And if you want to hear about the biggest temptation that keeps moms in survival mode, watch this next video.